In conclusion, Llywydd, we celebrate and we thank the sacrifice of those who gave their lives on the Normandy beaches and also more widely in World War II. We celebrate also our serving armed forces and veterans through Armed Forces Week and Armed Forces Day. And as Cabinet Secretary with responsibility for armed forces, veterans and their families in Wales, I commit to playing my fullest part in supporting them.
James Evans.
I'd like to thank the Cabinet Secretary for your statement this afternoon and outlining the Welsh Government's contribution to our armed forces community across Wales. I want to join with you and my group in your commitment and our commitment to veterans and their families across our country. Their service and sacrifice deserves our deepest gratitude. As you rightly mentioned, Wales does punch above its weight in terms of our armed forces personnel. Ensuring their well-being is paramount because Wales does send the most service personnel out of any part of the UK to serve in our armed forces. You mentioned about D-Day, and we all joined together to respect those who gave so much during those D-Day landings, and they made the ultimate sacrifice to ensure our freedoms. And I just think it's absolutely phenomenal what they did and what they had to go through to make sure that we actually have got peace in mainland Europe. I attended an event in Llanrindod, Wales, and I was deeply moved by some of the contributions that people made there and actually the stories that some of the people told me. Cabinet Secretary, I'd like to dive a little deeper, if that's okay, into a few areas you mentioned in your statement. You mentioned about the review of the Armed Forces Liaison Officers Programme. You mentioned that it is very critical that we keep that programme going. They do absolutely phenomenal work, but it'll be understanding the recommendations that will be vital for advocating for their continued support. So perhaps you could share some initial areas of focus for the review that you're having and how you'll engage with stakeholders going forward. You also mentioned about the support for armed forces personnel within our health boards and the peer support system that they've got there. Something that the cross-party group on the armed forces has talked about is actually having dedicated people within the health boards who fully understand our armed forces and armed forces personnel and whether they could be funded by the Welsh Government to create full-time posts. I'd be interested to know your views on that, because as a group we was going to write to you on that. So if you've got any updates on that, I'd be very grateful. You also talked about mental health support for veterans, and I think some of the work Welsh Government has done around that is commendable and to be celebrated, actually. I think we should always find areas of common ground which we agree on, and I think that is one place we do. Increased funding is a positive, but perhaps you could elaborate more on the specific programmes that the Welsh Government is pushing with health boards, because many veterans may be very hesitant to go out and seek support because of what they've actually had to go through, and it creates quite a macho culture where people don't actually want to seek support. So I think if you could outline today what programmes are available, it might actually help anybody who's listening from our veterans community to go and seek the support that they need. Furthermore, I do strongly agree with you about encouraging employers across Wales to engage with the Defence Employer Recognition Scheme. Showcasing best practice is important, and as you say, from Transport for Wales and Cardiff Bus is a great start. However, can you elaborate on any additional plans to promote the scheme across the country and best practice to Welsh businesses of all sizes, highlighting actually the valuable contribution that veterans can bring to the table in the workplace and the skills they've learned within our armed forces? Another thing I wanted to talk to you about was the role of armed forces champions within our local authorities. I think they do fantastic work within councillors across the country of raising the profile of our armed forces in local government. In my own local authority in Powys, the local authority there has taken the decision to actually remove our champion roles. I think that's a mistake, especially in terms of the Armed Forces champion role. And I'd be interested to know your thoughts, Cabinet Secretary, on that to make sure that we do have strong representation from our councillors in local government, because a lot of the services that veterans require are actually responsibility of our local authorities across Wales. And I do also believe in the continued collaboration that you've talked about as well between the public bodies. As I just said, is important for supporting our armed forces community, and effective communication and outreach strategies are vital to ensuring, as I've said earlier, on mental health support and housing support, just exactly what people are available of and how they can access them. From my end, Cabinet Secretary, I am committed to working with you in this area, as long as I know is the chair of the cross-party armed forces group, Darren Miller, who's done actually, I think, phenomenal work actually of raising the profile of our armed forces community here in the Senedd. I know he would like to be making a statement himself, but he can't. I'm afraid he's not here. Additionally, I'd like to echo finally some of the sentiments you made around Armed Forces Week, and I think that is another great great event that happens across our country to highlight our armed forces and the work they do to keep us safe day in, day out, night and day. They go to some of the most dangerous places in the world to make sure that we can actually sleep safe in our beds at night. And I think anything we can do to actually support them more is encourageable. And I'm pleased with the money that the Welsh Government is providing to do that. I wish we could have a bit more money to support Armed Forces Week right across the country, but maybe you could talk about that. But in closing, Cabinet Secretary, I'd like to thank you once again for your statement. I say I look forward to working collaboratively with you to support our Armed Forces community here across Wales to make sure they feel cherished and empowered for the vital role they play in our society. Diolch.
Diolch, James Evans. Can I thank James sincerely for a heartfelt tribute to our armed forces and our veterans. I know James is clearly passionate about this area of Welsh Government responsibility, and I do thank him for his questions today. There were a number of very, very valuable points that were raised, including the mental health of our armed forces veterans and serving personnel, the Defence Employer Recognition Scheme, the role of local authorities as well in supporting and promoting the armed forces of Wales and the wider United Kingdom. In terms of D-Day, I would agree it was a most remarkable occasion. I think it was C.S. Lewis who said that we read so that we know we are not alone, and I think it's invaluable at this time of year to read the stories of those who gave so much for Europe in the darkest of times. I personally attended the commemoration in Wrexham and followed this with a visit to the city's Armed Forces Community Hub. Now, in regards to mental health, that hub has proven to be invaluable. It's a fantastic means by which veterans are able to access information, be steered towards relevant support groups. And I know that similar hubs exist across Wales. For example, near Wrexham in Colwyn Bay, there is an equally effective hub that serves the armed forces community and indeed their families as well. And I'm looking to do all I can to support the growth of such hubs because they are vital in helping armed forces veterans access the services that they need. A huge amount of work is taking place within the NHS, and I referenced a letter to local health boards recently that invited them to look at best practice across Wales. It's absolutely essential that we learn from the very best, and that same message applies to local authorities. I was with the local authority Armed Forces Champion on Thursday and then again on Friday in Wrexham. You may know the Armed Forces Champion in Wrexham, Councillor Beverly Parry-Jones, fantastic advocate for Armed Forces veterans. I was very pleased to be with her at both those events, and I think some local authorities are to be commended on the way that they do support their Armed Forces champions, and I would advocate all 22 local authorities in maintaining support for them. With regard to the Defence Employer Recognition Scheme, this has been massively valuable as well, and it's something that I've discussed with a number of employers, indeed as recently at Zip World, meeting Sean Taylor, who has an incredible passion for supporting the armed forces and veterans, and it's through employer groups such as CBI that we are able to promote the Defence Employer Recognition Scheme, as well as through some of the regional employer groups as well that exist in Wales. In regards to armed forces liaison officers, I would agree that these have been held in the greatest regard across Wales. They really are fantastic, and I was with the Armed Forces Liaison Officer, again in Wrexham, on a number of occasions last week, discussing issues that face the armed forces, serving personnel, veterans, and again their families, and the role that they play in their communities. Funding has been confirmed again, £275,000, and we do know that our AVLOs are highly valued for the work that they do, but I think it's also important that we take stock of this to consider how we deliver for veterans over the longer term, and that's why we commissioned an evaluation of the network of AVLOs to help inform long-term planning. My view is that AVLOs have been invaluable, and the question is not whether they should continue to be supported, it's whether we can actually expand their role that we need to look at. and how we can support them as well in discharging their functions. I will, of course, engage widely with stakeholders and partners regarding the future of AVLOs across Wales, and I would be very pleased to bring the recommendations to the cross-party group for armed forces. Diolch.